Well, here we are on the cusp of the weekend, and Pat McGard has something for us for the weekend. Have you, Pat? Besides your presence, of course.
That sounds like a barber shop.
It was
Something for the weekend.
intended to.
No, I did. I'm looking out me window here. I think we're heading down to Dunlow later on today, so at least
Oh,
I'm
very
going to get
nice.
out of the house.
The Gap
Uh,
of Dunlow. What's the Gap of Dunlow like?
no, the Gap of Dunlow is actually in Kerry.
Oh,
The
sorry. Yeah.
the other Mary from Dunlow, you know the famous song.
Oh, yes, yes.
That's yeah, that's our Dunlow. That's
Uh,
the Donegal Dunlow.
is Daniel O'Donnell are in that direction, is he? No.
Daniel Donald is that there's a sort of wee museum down there, as far as I remember, to Daniel,
Yeah.
and he's from he's out the road, about 5 miles out the road from Dunlow.
Well, call out to him and he'll give you a cup of tea.
I can catch that. Daniel's from.
Send Rosie in
Aye.
first. He's very fond of older women, I think. Well, it's true. It's true. My mother was a very old woman.
Mommy.
Oh, yeah. He's every mother's dream, every Irish mother's dream.
A good loving young boy.
That's right. There's Kent, his mother, looks after his
By the
mother.
way, have you been offered the gig to take over the Late Late Show? Everybody else seems to have.
I haven't, no. I'm deeply disappointed. I see Patrick Kilty is pushing for it hard. What would you think about him as a replacement?
I don't know. Jesus. Anyway, I guess, Jude, to answer the question in the most direct way, it badly needs something. The Late Late Show used to be must see, must view. Jude is it's long gone from that. It's got very, very weak. Many's a Friday night now. I just skip it. And like I was one of the most loyal viewers you could come across.
Well, I'd be the same, but don't forget, you're only talking for yourself. There must be a lot of people still tuning in. Otherwise, the show wouldn't be on.
Jude, one night I remember Gay Byrne some years back. Well, when you consider it's Gay Byrne, it must be about 25, 30 years ago, maybe even more. He had on about 3 or 4 heavyweight guests. I think Peter Sellers was one of them. Peter Ustinov was another. And I remember just thinking, and then along comes on recent times, of somebody who has appeared in EastEnders twice. They can get, the star of EastEnders, and you're going, I've never heard of that person there. And you're going, like, am I interested in what, it's ridiculous. But anyway, that's a side issue. No, Jude, what I was trying to get at there, the number of people who have come forward to say they were ruling themselves out of the Late Late gig. I was going to say, I have ruled myself out as well.
Do you think are those people sincere, or are they just wanting people to, notice them and say, I will not serve if elected or selected, but please select me anyway, and we'll see.
I think it's more of the latter rather than the former. Yeah. I've ruled myself out. You were never in the running in the first place, so why are you ruling yourself out?
It's a prime slot, though, because I remember BBC Northern Ireland struggled at one time for years with a thing called The Show, which was being, at one point, the presenter was young Miss Paisley.
Yeah.
And now all in tears.
Oh, absolutely. I tried to be too controversial that one, and it ended in tears badly. I think it was the biggest budget ever. And then what was her name? Wasn't Aileen? No, that's the mother. And it doesn't matter. But it ended badly.
Rhonda.
What?
Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda.
Oh, Rhonda Paisley. Oh, Rhonda. That's right. But anyway, maybe they made some remark too on the first show that didn't go down well, particularly in the DUP. Can't remember now what it was, unfortunately, but it doesn't matter. But I remember that I sort of crash landed big time.
I remember there was about 2 or 3 replacements for Rhonda that only lasted about a week. And I remember David Dunseith being on it as the presenter. And he started off by saying, well, look, they had to get somebody. So they got me. I liked Dunseith. He was a good presenter. Okay, let's move to the issues of the day, the public issues of the day. You're saying that the Met has apologized for that arrest of those people who were protesting. We talked about this a bit now, but I think it bears a wee bit further scrutiny. The Republic was the protest group, I think.
I do find this. You see, we talked about a wee bit on Monday. What I found odd on Monday was the fact the BBC. I'd watched the news on BBC the previous evening, and they'd all but ignored it. Yet there was a massive backlash about it. And I was thinking the whole issue of the establishment and power and civil rights and democracy and the monarchy, it's all there in the mix. And anyway, on Monday evening, I think, as far as I remember, Sir Mark Rowley, who's now the Met Cop chief, he issued apology. Now, by the way, some people call it an apology. I don't know if it's an apology. They said that they regretted the reactions, the actions, and several Met policemen went round. I think he's called Graham Smith. He's the leader of Republic. They went round to his house and apologized to him, but he said they did it with their cameras on. So he said he refused to accept the apology on the basis. I think he thought, I'm being set up here. They're going to apologize, and if I say it's all right, they're going to say, well, look, he said it's all right. So they had on their body cams on, so he didn't accept the apology.
Wow.
And now I think it's a Dame, I can't remember her name, Dame. What's her name? Dame Diana Johnson, I think it was. I didn't write it down, but I think that's the name of the woman. She's the chair of the Police Oversight Committee in the House of Commons, and she has called for an urgent meeting of MPs to examine the way these people were arrested on the basis in which they were arrested. Jude, the whole thing for me, I got into a bit of a discussion with a friend on social media. He said if this was happening in Putin's Russia, the BBC and all, saying this is a clear case of dictatorial government and autocratic rule and all the rest of it. Jude, I don't know about you, but I think there's a serious question about that. Can you know, I might want to rob a bank. I might think I would like to own 1 million, but I'll never do it. Does preemptive arrests? What's the legal or moral stance? Arresting people on the basis that they might do something.
Oh yeah, I mean that's absurd. I think that there's a couple of things happening here. One is that the Met's on a bad streak at the moment. It's been caught with these cases of officers raping women and abusing them and God knows what over the years. And, it's seen as being systemic rather than just a couple of bad apples. So that's the first thing. Yeah. And then, as you say, there's a whole thing of how they handle protests. You remember there was big mass protests and they would kettle people, they called it kettling them, where they'd fence them off, as it were. But to tell you the other thing that amazes me is that back in the day, you would never have had Republic. I don't remember any protest. Just say during the Troubles now. Do you remember any protests in England against the monarchy? I mean, the very idea of somebody in England calling themselves a Republican, we wouldn't know what they're talking about. We'd assume they were talking about being Shinners or in the IRA or something. But now they're openly saying, does this monarchy make sense? I would say that's a big step forward. And maybe the idea was to sort of squash it before it gets too big.
But someone I think as well, I noticed that quite a few Tory MPs are calling for an inquiry into what went on here, which I got to admit, I find that a bit
astonishing.
I think sometimes cops, I don't know, this sort of authoritarian, it's nearly a default position, but there's a considerable backlash this time. But what really got to me in a strange sort of way was I read, as I told you on Monday, The Observer. And they had a brilliant article, I think, on about page 4 or 5. They had done a newspaper. A TV station should not be sort of scooped by a newspaper who had he rated 24 hours earlier. They had a very, very good article about the police in action and about the sort of lack of democracy and the heavy-handedness of the police. And I read that on Sunday morning. So I watched the news. The only time I got a chance to watch the news was at about 10 o'clock on Sunday night because we'd been out all day. And I watched it. And I think there might have been one line the police have defended, and that was it. They've defended actions today. I'm not even certain that line was in. But then the next day, the whole thing got up and I said, wait a minute. After the Observer had journalists and they were capable of doing, why is the BBC avoiding this? This is a big issue, and it was clear it was a big issue. And now the police have said, yes, this statement. But they arrested 64 people. And as far as I know, all but 4 of them have been released without charge, nothing whatsoever. And the 4 arrested were not, they're something like drugs or something, like maybe they had cannabis or something on them. Yeah. It's nothing to do with the protest.
Yeah, and what's more, they were kept, I think it was a guy making a documentary, and he was kept under arrest for 16 to 18 hours. Plus, this group said, we had all sorts of discussions with the Met in advance. We told them where we're going to be. They told us where we could be. We told them what we were making a film. The Met knew everything. And then on the day, it was different officers who apparently weren't in the loop, and they waded in and arrested them. I just think...
so maybe I'm getting... I find that hard to believe. I think that's going to be part of their... I think that's just cynicism. I really genuinely... I think they knew what they were going to do from the very start, and it's part of this the old right-wing establishment always wins in England. Though this time
I'm not sure about that anymore in that one now. I think a lot more people are thinking about the monarchy and seeing it as not making sense economically or all sorts of ways, democratically speaking. The thing that might keep them in place is nostalgia and the desire to have somebody to look up to or put on a sort of a soap opera, real life soap opera. The other thing is, of course, right now they're in a bad place, the monarchy, because nobody likes Charles. Hardly anybody likes Charles. No. I mean, he screwed up so many things. And so they're hoping, I think, that Charles will abdicate or he'll, move off as quickly as possible and allow William in. And they figure William will have enough love of the people will love him enough that will revive the sense of the love for the monarchy. Whether it will or not, I'm not sure. Depends on whether they go with the head or the heart. If they go with the head at all, I think they dump a lot of them out. Did you ever read that book, by the way, by Sue Townsend? Wrote a book called The Queen and I or something like that? And it was set in a future where the Queen was deposed and she got a job in Tesco's or somewhere like that. You ever read it?
No, I haven't read that. No.
It was very good. It was Sue Townsend, the one who did Adrian Mole.
18 mole, 13 and a half.
That's right. I thought that was a brilliant book, incidentally. We'll come back to books later on. Okay, so much for the Met. I think they're sort of in the place where the RUC were at one stage. There's so many bad things coming up. So, Jeffrey, now, you say you saw him in The View last night. I didn't. I'm anticipating that pleasure tonight. So don't spoil anything for me. But tell me about him. You believe that he showed that the DUP have really got themselves into a real bind about this Windsor framework.
Aye, but first, before I go to that, Jude, it was, you see, what do you call him? Murphy was on. Jesus, I'm having a bad morning names wise. Sinn Féin's Murphy, the finance minister. What's his first name? Doesn't matter.
Connor
Murphy. Yeah, Connor. He was on the Mark Curlers. It sort of says this is supposed to be a leader's question. Why are you here, rather than Michelle O'Neill or Mary Lou McDonald? And it was a good point, because it was, and I got to admit, I was asking myself the same question. But anyway, Connor, well, I don't know if he answered it brilliantly, but he said Mary Lou and Michelle had done plenty of interviews, and there was no, you shouldn't read anything too much. And he was put forward as this. He said it's a collective leadership, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, I don't know if that. So I'm just putting that out of the way. He didn't do brilliantly, but he didn't do badly either.
Can I interject for a minute, Pat? Just ask you a question. If Carruthers hadn't raised the point, would you have asked yourself, why is Conor Murphy on?
I certainly would. Yeah,
would you?
I definitely would.
See, I probably missed that now. Anyway, okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, it was. I was actually, when I saw him, I was going, this is supposed to be leaders debate. Anyway, but Sir Jeffrey's turned out to be an absolute car crash of an interview, and I have to give it to Carruthers. He was brilliant. He was frantic. First of all, Judy, he got on this Windsor document, but I'll come back to that in a minute. But then he got on. He says, you've got, I think it's 120 or 130 candidates in the next election, and he started reading about some of them, Jude, about some of their comments on social media. And Jude, I don't want to make comments, because some of these things I think are basically maybe even legal. They were seriously sectarian, and some of them quite nasty, and I don't know. And Sir Jeffrey looked more and more and more uncomfortable. In fact, his face started to get quite red, and he started, and each time Carruthers would bring out, and this is somebody, and this is what they've said. Are you defending this? Did you vet this person and all the rest of it? And if you watch, you can watch this. But then At the start of the interview, obviously the main thing was the Windsor framework. And Sir Geoffrey seems to think that they have got this power. He says the UK government will have to work harder to get more concessions from the EU on the Windsor framework document. And even Carroll says, wait a minute, you're a small party in Northern Ireland. Are you seriously thinking that you can have the power to make these people dance sort of to your tune? And Geoffrey seemed to think yes. And he says our 7 tests have not been made, and we will not be going back until such times. So I was sitting thinking there, something, if these people are that delusional. Now, the EU have said there's no renegotiation. London says there's no, and Mark Carroll's actually said that. They said that in the past and they renegotiated. Dude, I don't know where these people are going, because Sunak, they made it very clear. And of course, the final point, they voted this thing through Parliament with, what was it, 517 for and 29 against.
Correct.
So, right. Yeah. Sorry, that's me.
It's a done deal. I was just sort of wondering if Geoffrey brought up, do you remember this committee of people he established that were going to do some sort of research into it and come back and report to him and advise him? Was that mentioned even?
No.
And I was thinking also, what would happen if this committee, whatever you call them, came up with findings and advice that ran counter to his 6 pledges or whatever they were that he had?
The 7 tests.
The 7 tests. Well, who would win? Would it be a draw or what?
Yeah.
I think the fact of the matter is they really are in a tough spot. Here's my guess, and I think I'm right. I'm being presumptuous perhaps, but I'm going to say it. I'm almost sure they'll go into back to Stormont in September, October. They'll do so having been given some concession, some bauble to wave above their heads, that they can say, we would not have got, Northern Ireland would not have got this only for our insistence on the principle of the thing. I think that's what they're doing. Yeah. And a lot will depend too, of course, on how they do in the local elections. If the local elections are shambles for them, oh, wow. But I think that the polls indicate that the majority of their supporters are in favour of the line they're taking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think they're putting forward 152 candidates, something like that. Maybe it's somewhere along that 150. I think it's 8 or 9 less than last time. But Jude, I presume a lot of this stuff that's been chucked out onto the great public debate is for the election purposes, and maybe after. But of course, I would to contradict myself now. So Geoffrey said, if those people think we're only saying this for the purpose of election, they're wrong. It was a lie the last time, and it's a lie this time, and we are not for turning on this even after the election.
What is he saying is a lie? What is he? Sorry, Pat. What is he saying is a lie?
That they will sort of wilt like a flower after the election this, and that they will stand tough. Now, I'm repeating myself, but it's worth repeating. If he sticks to this, Stormont isn't coming back.
That's right. But do you think they'd want to do that to happen? I think not. I think they see they like devolution. They've always liked devolution for one reason or another. Certainly their older, I suppose, big beasts noticeably went to Westminster. But I think the future they saw it as being in Stormont. But that's all screwed up too for them, because the future does not look rosy at Stormont. They're talking about, somebody was on, I forget who it was, but they were talking about how Northern Ireland looking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And I was shouting at the screen, what are you talking about? There's going to be an All-Ireland poll long before 20 years. And there's a very good chance that it won't exist. So I don't, is it delusion, or is it simply a public front they put on, or is it that they really believe it, or what?
Geoffrey used the term too, that this lie was used to steal the DUP's votes. He seems to think there's an arrogance there. I thought, I mean, the DUP votes. Does the DUP have the right to all unionist votes? And anybody that says anything different is trying to steal their votes. There's an arrogance there. And I came away, I was involved in a wee bit of politics myself and my other life. And I the way sometimes you're going, these people for real? Do they all really understand, what's going on out there? And I think the DUP have been so used, so mollycoddled, so patted on the back for so long that they've lost the run on themselves totally, and they're not living in the real. That's my honest opinion of them now. I think they have got it so wrong. And sometimes, when people go on a train that's heading for the buffers, they don't know how to get off.
You tend to have people leaping around and running around in circles and
exactly
jumping towards windows. Incidentally, did you catch that remark? I was listening to the interview with the leader of the Alliance Party, Naomi Long, on radio yesterday, and the quotation was put forward for her that Biden had said that he made his Ireland visit to stop the Brits pissing around, or words to that effect. How did you think she reacted to that?
No, I didn't hear the interview yet.
Oh, you didn't hear it?
No, I didn't hear Naomi, but I heard the Biden's remarks, and that he came to Ireland to stop the Brits sticking around with the Good Friday Agreement. He knows that's going back. Dude, I think a lot of people have got fed up with the Brits. The whole Boris Johnson era, the dishonesty and even I was reading just to diverge or digress for a wee minute. The guy who produced a lot of the stuff for I know he's a lying bastard, but why is he lying to me? That's the title of his book. He was the guy who did that. He did the Jeremy Paxman show. He did the Andrew Neil show, and he did the Andrew Marr show. He was the producer, and he said he thought the Tories under Johnson were dishonourable in every shape and form, including the fact they got Jeremy Corbyn on to do the interview with Andrew Neil on the basis that they thought they had a done deal with the Tories. And the minute Corbyn was finished, they pulled out of the interview with Andrew Neil. So I think the EU don't have a lot of time for the Tories. Scotland certainly doesn't have a lot of time for the Tories. Northern Ireland, majority don't have a lot of time for the Tories. And you can keep going. They know that the party that used to be for law and order have now become totally dishonourable. So I think Joe Biden was sort of basically saying, I don't trust these people, and that's the whole thing. And he was making sure the world knew what side the Americans were on.
Right. Would you like me to make a prediction for the British general election in 2 years' time? I think it is. Whether you would or not, I'm going to tell you. I think there's a possibility the Tories could be returned. The Richie Sunak is fairly widely admired among most of the Tories. They feel he's brought the stability. He sounds like he isn't an offensive guy in your face saying Latin tags and, bluffing, obviously. If he was somehow miraculously to revive the British economy in, say, 2 years, I think people would look at him and they'd look at the Starmer and the Labour Party and they'd say, I think it'll stick with Rishi. Do you think, was that a possibility?
To get back to you asked the question. What did Naomi Long? Were you impressed by her answer?
No, I just thought she handled it. She said something like, "Oh dear," which I said myself. The remark I used myself on one famous occasion on air. She said, "Oh dear," whenever Crawley cited Biden's words, and she said, "Oh well, he has a reputation for gaffes and so on," and then she sort of glided away from it. Well, essentially, she was kind of supportive of Biden, but she wasn't going to die in a ditch about that one. She, like a lot of people, that would have been regretted. But actually, Biden, I think, knew what he was doing. He knew that a lot of people who would hear that would say, "That's straight talking. That's the way I want to hear people talking." He's not as dumb as he looks.
Not at all. By the way, some of his gaffes have played very well for him, so I wouldn't go that far.
Although there was a very painful one. Did you see that one where they did it as a GIF or a GIF or whatever, where he was going up the steps of the plane and he stumbled and fell, and they kept on doing it?
Oh no, I was thinking more of his comments. He's made comments over the years that everybody says are gaffes, and they come across as, "Oh, 'cause that's just Joe." And they go down well.
Maybe it could be all right. Although he also was supposed to have plunged his nose into some woman's hair and told her from behind and said, "Do I really like your hair?" I don't know if I can explain that one away. Okay. Let's move on. Let's move on. Since we're across the Atlantic, we'll stay there and look at the case of this woman who's got an extraordinary name, E. Jean Carroll. Must be other people who have done that. The Americans do that kind of thing, don't they? They put the initial first, and
like
then the name.
Hunter Biden, a Campbell Taylor's, whatever. You go, Jesus, what sort of names?
Well, I don't know about the name, but it's the initial E, and then
E.
Jean Carroll.
Yeah.
That's just like it's like Daryl. It was Daryl Zanuck, the producer and
the producer, right? It wasn't he the guy that produced Gone with the Wind?
I may have been. Well, I thought anyway. This E. Jean Carroll has helped herself to a handy $4 million award because of what Trump did to her. Did you read the details of that? I'm not saying we're going to talk about the
I read the case. Judy, he was found not guilty of rape, but he was guilty of sexual abuse.
Sexual misconduct.
He was also found.
Did you read what? Did you read what he actually did? We're not going to talk about it. But
no, I haven't. No, I didn't read that.
I read what he actually did. I mean, it was simply disgusting display of I'm the man. I can do what I want with you. That in so many words, that's what he did. He projected that whole. I mean, really revolting. Really revolting. I mean, if some scabrous little teenager with testosterone popping out all over him, with no respect for anybody except himself, was to do what Trump did with that woman, if the courts are telling the truth or she's telling the truth, then I mean, the guy's unspeakable. He really shouldn't be allowed to run for city dog catcher, let alone president.
He's usually given a free run on Fox News, but this week he did this thing on CNN, and there's a bit of a backlash against it on CNN, that the fact that they give him this platform. And now there's some people saying that the lady, Kathleen Collins, I think was the name, Kathleen Collins was the name of the CNN presenter.
Probably
they call them moderators or what the hell they call it. And they call these things town hall meetings. But it was a town hall meeting where all the people in the audience were Republicans. But I watched a wee bit of it, and I thought, this guy is basically saying again that the 2020 election was fixed. It was a rigged election. He was allowed to get away with that. He repeated that several times. He what else? He was going to pardon the rioters on January 6th, the people who invaded the Parliament of the United States, on the basis that he saw they were in prison together and they sang the Star Spangled Banner. This proved they were patriots. That the fact that he'd been found guilty in a civil court was a sort of a harangued jury, and that he was totally innocent, and it showed that America that was going down the pan, and only he could bring it back again. He said he would resolve the Ukraine conflict in 24 hours.
24 hours, yeah.
And he was all over the place on abortion. I'm not even going to go into that part of the debate. I'll just make the point is, I've yet to figure out how all these Republicans who are so rabid about abortion, every one of them, to a man and a woman, are totally in favor of the death penalty. I'm in favor of both. All human life to me is sacred. But anyway, so on. But anyway, let's get this clear. This is what I'm getting to. That's such a Looney Tune is the front runner once again for the Republican Party presidential candidate. And I am going, what is happening to America? That such this guy now has been impeached twice. He's been found guilty of serious sexual assault. He has about 20 or 30 cases pending, apparently, when he's whatever background is. He's been his business dealings are now a matter of almost criminal racketeering type thing. And yet there are people tomorrow morning, if he stood for election, would vote for him in a heartbeat. He's got almost the Republicans are scared shitless of him.
Well, that's the thing, you see. There is, as you say, a huge number of people who are really under his spell. I mean, he is a very charismatic guy. He does say he'll solve all their problems, big problems. So, of course, they've sort of attached themselves to him, like these protesters. They've glued themselves to him. And it doesn't matter what he says or what he does even. They're his people. and they're going to stick with him.
Yeah.
And when he says something outrageous, they kind of say, yeah, good on you. You're obviously a strong man. You speak your mind. It's a good example of emotion overcoming any degree of intelligence or thought. So I'm not that surprised, really. It's just a rerun of what we saw. The question is, will enough people be discontent with the fact that he never produces evidence? Like he has said again and again that the last election was rigged. I don't think he's ever produced any proof of any kind, and I'm amazed that reporters haven't really grilled him on that. I mean, that seems to be an obvious thing.
But he never does interviews with people like, David Frost or Andrew Neil. He always does it with a PAT commentator. Even what do you call him? Piers Morgan interviewed him several years ago. It was an house fluff job. He was allowed to powder puff his whole way through. No, but I just now that we're on the subject, we had Trump in America, we had Erdogan in Turkey, we had Bolsonaro in Brazil. Who am I missing here? What do you call it? Orban in Hungary. These almost fascist, right-wing, intolerant of human rights and democracy. All these sort of strongmen. And I grew up in the 60s when make love, not war, and freedom and all the rest of it. We are people almost now going to these strong, these, I would say they're basically fascist. What's happening to the world?
But I think
people not like democracy?
Well, I think they don't. I think the democracy hasn't delivered for them. It has left them without jobs, or with jobs that are poorly paid or insecure or whatever. They're fed up with all the complicated talk and new language that you're supposed to observe. They have this culture wars thing that really gets on their nerves. And to confess, it gets on my nerves too. But as a result, they say, there's a better way. Let's forget about this crap about democracy and so on. Give me a strong leader. Give me a guy who can really do something. And I think all of us, to some extent, are attracted to that. I mean, for example, I tend to, if you take the Irish War of Independence, or the Tan War, whatever you want to call it, the figure that is remembered is Michael Collins. He was a tough guy. He was a charismatic guy. Yeah. He was a guy that got loyalty from people, and they did any number of things that they, under normal circumstances, they wouldn't have done. So I'm not saying that Michael Collins should be mentioned in the same breath as Trump, but it's the same sort of tendency that people look for somebody they can sort of be acolytes to. And that's what they're doing with these kids. Incidentally, though, the tide may have turned. They may have had, Trump was an example of that type of leader, and he got a chance to have a run at things. What a mess he made of it. He wasn't re-elected. The same thing looks like it's going to happen with Erdogan, I hope, in Turkey. So maybe the tide's beginning to change. Hold our breath and pray that it does.
No, but like Bolsonaro in Brazil, he was an outright, basically misogynist, a homophobe, totally intolerant of anti the native people. Totally beholden to the rich and the powerful, looked after their interests, made no interest of looking after the poor. Yet the very people who needed him most were the people who voted for him. Yeah. And I never, ever feel to be amazed that people, working class people, think the likes of Boris Johnson, people in Britain, I've seen quite a lot of it in social media, think that people like Boris Johnson are going to deliver for them. Yeah, I'm going, are you completely moronic? And it's not even an opinion, it's a fact. The Tory party does not deliver for working people.
That's true. But I think it is that these guys have found, in all of us, there's a sort of a darkness, a dark side. And these guys can tap into that. Just as there's goodness in all of us, and we want to look out for our fellow man and women, there's also a dark side of us that wants simple answers that look after me, not other people. And these guys have found ways of tapping into that, and they're getting the big response. And, the more they do it, apparently the more successful. But on the other hand, these things do tend to follow a certain tide of history. And we've had, you say, flower power and make love, not war. Maybe we've moved now to the point where we're passing, I hope, the strong man stuff and invading countries because you feel like it. Maybe we're moving to something better. Incidentally, just a last point on this. We tend to be very American-centered. You know, we tend to be very Western-centered. For example, with regard to what's going on in the Ukraine, we tend to side with the West. I was listening to a guy talking, it might have been Noam Chomsky or somebody, and he was saying that India, Brazil, Asia, China, a huge number of people or countries have rejected the call of America to side with them. They know that Putin made a terrible mistake by invading, or horrible deed by invading Ukraine, but they're not on the same, will not fall into line with Americans. So that there's a big body of people or countries thinking differently. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. What do you call them? The BRIC countries, and that what it's called? Brazil.
They're the ones. They're the ones that the UK was going to sign all those wonderful trade deals with.
Never happened. Anyway, can I change it? Somebody and we've only got about a minute left. See, the Republic are supposed to be having over the next 3 or 4 years a £65 billion surplus. At the same time, everything in the north's getting cut and getting cut to the bone. What's your views on that? You've got a minute.
I really don't know. Well, two things. One is that there's an £800 million hole in the budget in the north, and they're racking their brains how the hell they're going to handle it. The second thing, so I tend to say, well, there's your relationship with Mother Britain. The second thing is that that money that's pumped into the south, why then do you have people sleeping on the street? It does seem to me to be a wonderful thing, but they really should be using it properly when they have it, setting up a health system and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and there's a lot of people going to have a lot of problems next. But I thought it was amazing. The prediction is 65 billion over the next 4 years or something.
Okay. Anyway, that's their problem. Have a good weekend, Pat. Enjoy yourself.
Jude.
It's later than you think.